All right, we are back for another episode of Beyond the Skills podcast, where we talk about everything: business, entrepreneurship, real estate, sex, drugs, rock and roll, politics, communists, capitalism. You name it, we talk about it. We've got a special guest for you today, Mr. Michael Byers from South Carolina. Good old boy from South Carolina, just like me. I'm pumped to have him.
Appreciate the offer.
Yeah. Michael, I've been knowing you for probably about 2.5, 3 years, I believe.
Yep.
And got a lot of similarities, not just a Southern accent, but a lot of commonalities and, your way of thinking and your just good old boyness and doing the right thing and trying to make as much money you can and help as many people as you can along the way.
Right.
So appreciate you coming down to Louisiana and coming to this podcast with me.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, Michael, tell us a little bit of who Michael is for my audience that doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, so, I grew up in a small little town in South Carolina. There's about 12,000 people there. Did all right in school, went to Clemson, had a full ride there. Dropped out after about a year and a half because I started a tech company while I was there, and it just, I was doing a little bit better in the tech company than I believed I could do in school. I dropped out of school, concentrated on that till I turned 21. I bought my first business then. It was doing about $250,000 a year.
This is after you dropped out of college?
After I dropped out of college, yeah.
What were you in college, like a sophomore or junior?
Sophomore. Yep.
Sophomore.
Yep, so I stayed a year and a half, 3 semesters. Dropped out of school, bought that first business. It was doing about $250,000 a year. About $50,000 a year in net profit. I grew it within 2 years all the way to a little over $3 million a year top line and over $1 million a year net.
Wow. At 20, but you were 23 by this time?
23, yep. 23, 24, right in there. So, and, I operated it for 7 or 8 years. Decided I was going to sell it, buy a different business in the same field. It was failing. I bought it, and we were losing, when I bought it, we were losing about $4,000 a week. And
a week?
Yeah, a week. Yeah, so you got to get in there and clean it up quick, right?
Yeah.
So I was losing about $4,000 a week when I bought it, and I sold it 13 months later, and we made over $1 million.
Wow.
Just by the same systems, operation, and processes I built from the last business.
This is 25, 26?
No, I was 28.
4 years later.
28, okay. 29. So... No, I might have been right around 30. Yeah, somewhere right around 30. Because I run the first one for 7 to 8 years. And it took me a year to build that one, get it out of the tank.
Yeah.
When I sold it, I had a little money sitting to the side. I still had the tech support company that I started back in college and had a little extra money. Started buying some real estate stuff. I was buying just some stuff looking for some passive income. And, fast forward to today, I got about 185 single-family homes, about 10 commercial buildings. But, as I started buying those real estate properties, I understood that, I needed some sort of supporting businesses because I was spending a ton of money with, plumbers, HVAC guys that were clearing the land, general contractors. Everybody that went around all of these businesses and anything that revolved around that real estate business, right? So I started buying up. I bought a plumbing company. I bought a heating and air company. I bought a general contracting company. I bought a forestry mulching company. I bought a grading company. Anything, I bought a small rehab company. I bought all those service-based businesses up because not to try, we did end up saving money, but that was just a byproduct of what I was doing. I was buying it so I could give my customers or my renters a better experience. If I call the average plumber back where I'm from, it's going to be a week and a half, 2 weeks before somebody can get out there. If I call the HVAC guy, the heating and air guy, it's going to be a week and a half, 2 weeks before somebody can get out there. I never felt right telling, my renter or my customer at that point that, it was going to take that amount of time. I ended up buying a property management property management company because of stuff like that, because they couldn't get the stuff done, the guys that I was dealing with. So, I bought all that stuff. When I started my tech support company, man, that the only differentiating factor between me and everybody else, because I sold some of the same products that a lot of other people did, the differentiating factor was I would go to work. If they called, I answered the phone. If they needed something, I tried to help them, no matter if it was at night or on the weekends. I just went to work, where the other guys that got fat and happy, right? They weren't hungry anymore because they were doing well.
You stayed consistent.
Yeah, I was still today. The tech support company, we run 24-hour, 7 days a week support. Where a lot of other companies, it's 8 to 5, maybe 7 to 7. We run 24/7. We don't have, we just offer something that other folks don't because they got lazy. Does it cost me a little more? Yeah. But do I provide better service? Absolutely. And at the end of the day, people, like we were talking the other day, people will pay to have their problem solved. Doesn't matter. All of us, anytime we go pay for anything, it's to solve a problem. Even if it's going out to eat, we're hungry. We got a problem. We want to solve it, right? So, it's not about, it wasn't about, when I started buying these service-based businesses, it wasn't about saving the money. It's about providing a better experience to my renters or my customers because I was looking for long-term tenants. We both know that, our most costly expense in any kind of real estate venture with renting is the turnover, yep. Right? Because if somebody's lived there for a gazillion years, there's going to be small stuff we have to do, and that costs money. But as long as they continue to stay there, it doesn't cost anything. They don't complain, right? So my goal was to cut down or eliminate the turnover. How can I get a tenant and keep that tenant as long as they stay in my area? And by doing the stuff that I did, it solved that problem.
Staying on top of all the maintenance and staying on top of all the service calls.
Everything. I mean, our service call, our average turnaround on a service call is 24 hours or less. Yeah. I don't care what it is. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these rental companies, it might be, we'll get to you next week or we'll get to you the week after. Yep. It's just not acceptable in my world.
Yeah, and most property management companies that you outsource and try to be passive, passively. Yeah. Listen to what I'm saying, guys. Your passive income, they ain't nothing passive about what me and Mike were talking about today on rental property. Ain't nothing passive. But what happens with these property management companies when you try to outsource it and you're not in-house, because I do all in-house stuff, right. They will have so much turnover because the quality and the consistency and how quick they get to it is not going to be anywhere near something in-house.
Well, it's not. It is that, but it's the experience for the customer, I believe, or the renter. If they get a better experience, they know that I want it fixed just as bad as they do. A lot of the folks, if they don't move outside of my service area, they say, what do you got over here on this part of town? Or what do you have over here in this next city? They're not looking for another rental company to go to. They're looking for, what else do I have? Or I've had a lot of them, hey, we're looking at buying a house. Would you be interested in buying one and owner financing it to us just because they know the level of service we're giving them? And I feel like that's huge because, number one, I know they trust us and, they believe in us and the quality of service we're going to provide. So that's huge.
Absolutely.
For me,
it's huge. Yeah. No, that's been my experience too, is trying to keep everything in-house.
Yep.
And controlling everything to the point where the quality of service is so good, so fast that you have a product or service that is just,
nobody can compete with you if you do that.
Yep.
Nobody.
100% believe in that. So got into real estate, rolled your profits from your business into real estate.
Yep.
And I was about 30. You're 30 years old when you start buying real estate?
Yep.
And you're how old? How old right
42 now.
Okay, so you're 42. Yep. Made a few exits, got a little bit of money, started investing in real estate when you were 30. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, and then let's take us from there, from 30, so everybody knows your time track.
So, I started buying real estate. I started buying businesses surrounding that. And then, I just kept, I got it was the same as the first business. I got a good systems, operations, and processes put together. And I started buying other businesses that, even outside the real estate realm, that I knew that I could add value to. I'm super good with, building out systems, processes, automations, super good with any kind of technology stuff. And I mean, it's just worked well. Now I've got 22 companies under management, and I'm going to buy stuff that's already cash flowing. I like stuff 1 to 10 million, really. Yeah. And what I want to do is I want to buy something that is already cash flowing 25, 30%. And I want to come in there and make it better. I don't want to do any turnarounds. I don't want to do any, I know you're great at startups. I just don't like them, right? I want to buy something, what's in motion tends to stay in motion, right? Yep. And I'm looking to buy something that is already in motion that I can just pour the gas on, that I can make it better. Maybe, Chuck in a truck, Bob the plumber's got him a
Chuck in a truck.
He's got him a good business and it's going along good, but he just can't scale.
Yep.
My real skill set is coming in there and helping those guys be able to scale. If they're doing $1 million, $2 million a year, and being able to get them to, $8 to $10 million within 2, 3, 4 years.
Yep.
But
that's your unique ability. Yeah. And I can vouch for everything you said about you're very analytical. Like you see things, you see through the minutia of stuff, and you can break down stuff. You have an engineer's mindset.
Yep.
Very analytical guy, which I'm not. I'm like full force
just
drive.
Get it fixed.
Just bust the wall down to get it done, and I destroy everything in my path. But I get to the finish line. But we're cut bleeding to death, right?
Right.
So this is good. So bought up all the businesses. You're 42 right now. Just turned 42. What does your portfolio and business and real estate portfolio look like today in holdings and revenue?
Holdings probably a little over. You're asking.
Let's start with real estate. How many units do you own right now?
Somewhere
roughly.
A little over 185.
Yeah.
Single family and about 10 commercial buildings.
Yeah. And do you have any? You have some mobile homes too, don't you, for rentals?
Yep.
So it's a mixture.
That's mixed.
Yeah.
Yep. Single family. Yep.
Yep. Single family, residential, a few commercial buildings. Yep. And then your bread and butter is mergers and acquisitions, where you're buying businesses,
scaling them up,
repackaging them, selling them, or keeping them for cash flow. Right. And how many of those businesses you own right now?
22 currently.
22 current businesses.
Yep.
Give us, you don't have to sell all 22, but give us 5 to 8 businesses you own right now besides the ones you already mentioned.
Yeah, I own part of a coffee chain that we have. We got a roastery, some brick and mortar stores, wholesale division. Own part of a mailbox company, own part of a head lice removal and remediation company. We were talking about that the other days. Just super weirdo stuff like that. Let's see what other cool stuff I got. I got part of a mailbox company, tech support company. I've got a few parts distribution companies. Just I like boring, profitable. Yeah, plumbing, HVAC, property management.
Yep. So,
I
you're
like
diversified.
The boring, profitable stuff. Super diversified. Not one of those things where all my eggs are in one basket.
Yeah, love that. I'm of the same thinking that I don't want to just have all those people that say go just one thing and that's all you do. I never have done that my whole life. I've always did one thing and I've scaled that one thing and I diversified off that one thing. Like case in point, when I started my oil change business out of the back of my truck when I was 22, I started off with just oil changes. Then I started washing cars. Then I started to learn how to do auto glass repair. Then I started doing tire rotations. Yep. Then I started doing mechanic work. It's all off the same. It's vehicle maintenance.
For sure.
But
for sure. All you got to do is add a few more tools to the truck.
Correct. But it diversified me so much. My average ticket, instead of going and just getting an oil change for
went from $80 to $400.
Correct. On every stop. So you guys got to understand the difference between being diversified and being all over the place.
Right.
There's a difference.
And there's a huge difference.
Huge difference from that. Because people just say, just do one thing. You're gonna a jack of all trades. What they say that?
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none. Or if you chasing me squirrels, you don't chase any. Dude, I've been chasing a bunch of squirrels my whole life. Yep. The key is just chase the same squirrel and understand that there's all kind of different nuts that squirrel can eat.
That's right.
So. Glad, because we got a lot of the same similarities. I've been knowing you for a long time, Michael, and you have a lot of skill sets that I don't have because you're so analytical, and I think this is super important for people listening because you have to truly understand personality types
For sure.
and where people are at and what they can be good at. I can never do a company where you're building out automation for, you're building out bots and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The other business we were talking about with the mobile homes, you were building out CRMs, you were building out, I'm watching you do this. I'm like, this is like, I don't even know where to start. So, because most analytical people are like that. So understand where people's heads at entrepreneurially. Like, you have to, there's so many different people with so many different skill sets, and we're not all the same as entrepreneurs.
Nope. And you're never going to be.
Yeah.
But
so now you're 42. You've been doing mergers and acquisitions now since you were literally 22. Is that when you did your
21.
21. I did mine. Well, I didn't do merger. The difference between Michael and I, which we have a lot of similarities and differences, is that I come from a lot of startups, right?
Right.
I started an oil change business out of the back of my truck and scaled it to 4 locations in my town, multi-7-figure business. I started an auto glass business that was doing about $700,000 a year out of the back of my truck. Then I started a real estate company out of the back of my truck. So I have a different background of startups, which they both have their pros and cons.
Absolutely,
we've been talking about that because a lot of people, beat up on the startup. Don't do startup, and I'm like, I don't. That has not been my experience.
It's just like we talk all the time about, different styles of business or types of businesses fit real well into different categories of people, right? Your younger guy, like we always talk about, your younger guy who may have, $10,000 or less in his bank account, and he's really looking to become an entrepreneur, startup route is the way for him. He can't go buy a $2 million business, but he can start up. He can become an entrepreneur. He doesn't have to get stuck in that rat race like we always talk about, right? Well,
let's talk about the pros and cons of startup versus mergers and acquisitions, because I think entrepreneurs need to understand both, and they need to master both. And there's a season and time of life to do both, and not do one but do the other one. Whereas when I started my startups, because I don't want to say I didn't do mergers and acquisitions, because I bought 4 physical locations.
Right.
All 4 of the locations. Never did mergers. I did a lot of mergers. I started my business out of the back of my truck, but I bought physical locations. I bought the real estate. They were already operating, but they were operating from distressed sellers that I caught wind of, that weren't paying their lease, or they were behind on their taxes, and I made a deal with them and I bought them out.
Right.
But I took my startup and just moved into a building.
Correct.
But for you younger entrepreneurs that are, say, 20 to, say, 30 years old, you're right. If you only have maybe $10,000 to $20,000 in your account, and you don't have a lot of business acumen skills, you have not mastered a lot of the 4 basic fundamentals of business, which I would say is marketing, sales, operations, finance, right? Every entrepreneur kind of knows that, who's seasoned vet. If you don't understand that, you're probably better off using that $10,000 and going and buying a set of tools and get into the service trades right now with a startup.
Creating some sort of skill set.
Yeah.
Going buying those tools, getting into that service-based business. Go to tech school. Go to a trade school. Get that education so you can go create that revenue for yourself.
And you don't even have to do that these days, though, Michael. I mean, you could literally go work as an apprentice under a plumber for a year or 2 years, or go work at an HVAC company and learn the business somewhat, and then start doing some side work. I'm not telling you to be unethical and go do side and steal some of your current boss's clients, but you can usually do side work just with your buddies and friends and family as you learn the trade, and then eventually you can branch off onto your own, right?
Right. But I don't know about here, but in South Carolina, you got to have that 2-year degree in order to get a license.
Yeah.
So if that's their end goal,
well, like in Louisiana,
suck it up and go knock it out.
Yeah, like in Louisiana for like HVAC, right? You have to pull a permit to do a new build construction to install AC, but you don't have to have a license to do a change out on a pre-existing house.
So it's not like that in South Carolina.
In Louisiana you can do that.
South Carolina, you got to have a license to buy parts. So they got you.
Yeah. Okay. What's different? So you check. I'm glad he said check your state and see what the laws are. But there's a number of different ways that you guys can start a business from scratch.
For sure.
But here's the de facto thing that's going to make the difference between being a business buyer versus a business startup, and that is an insane work ethic.
That's exactly right.
I could tell you everything I did. I have an insane work ethic where I don't even know what day of the week it is. I don't count hours. I don't punch out at 5. I work when there's work to be done. I don't care what time of the day it is. If you don't have that work ethic when you're trying to do a startup as a young kid, and
you're not gonna make it.
You're not gonna make it.
Not gonna make it. You got to outwork everybody else in your field.
And that was my superpower when I was a young kid. I wasn't that bright. Like, I'm still not that bright, right? I'm just too stupid to quit. And I have an insane work ethic. And that was my superpower and my unfair advantage over the competitions that nobody would outwork.
That was mine too, though.
Yeah.
I was just so hungry. We didn't grow up with a whole lot. And I was so hungry that I never wanted to go back there. And, when I started the tech support company, I outworked everybody else there 2 to 1, 3 to 1. And in a few years, I was making 2 to 1, 3 to 1 of their money too.
Yep. There ain't no secret, right?
There ain't no secret. Nobody can walk by you and slap you in the head with a magic wand and make you just successful. You got to go out there and outwork everybody until you get it figured out.
Right. There is no secret. There's only unfair and strategic advantages in business. That's what I've learned in my 20 years of being in business, is that
Correct.
There's just unfair advantages, which could be either, a high output of your activity and action, meaning you have a higher hustle than everybody else, or you have more of a higher skill set than somebody else. Other than that, outside of that, there is no luck. But I can tell you this: the harder I work, the luckier I got.
That's it. And people talk about their skill set. No, he's just lucky. He got, he's a natural. No, I worked 4 times harder than they did and just became good at it.
That's good. It's
kind of like, they always say, practice makes perfect. If you work on whatever you're doing, no matter what it is, just think about it. If you're a young guy, you're trying to get in a startup business, you're never going to be as good as like the heat and air guy that's been in business 30 years. He's going to know tricks from experience that he's noticed over the years that you're never going to read in a book. You're never going to see anywhere. And without you being with him every day and him showing you, because some of that stuff might not come up all the time, right? Yeah. All that comes from experience. And the only way to get that experience is go out there and do the work.
Yeah, the reps.
Nobody's going to give it to you in a book, and nobody's going to slap you in the head with a magic wand.
No, you got to put in the reps. Yep. And you got to be willing to, 1, look stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
And 2, take it on the chin with the mistakes, because you're going to have mistakes and you're going to have losses, and be able to reverse engineer that in your mind and be like, okay, hey, I took a big L, but what can I learn?
That's it.
You turn every loss into a learning experience, because as an entrepreneur, I truly believe the true blue entrepreneurs, that are the real guys that don't quit, are the ones that understand that you never lose, you only learn.
That's it. People ask me the other day, what about the losses you've taken if you bought a business? And I bought 2 of them that have failed. They weren't losses, they were lessons. Yeah. And when you learn to understand that and apply that, that's a whole nother superpower that you just unlocked out of the box. It's kind of like the video game when you unlock the next level.
100%. That's like kryptonite, right?
Yep.
If you can master not quitting, dude, that's an absolute superpower.
That's it.
No, I love that. I love talking about the entrepreneurial game. I love, for me, that's my sport, right? Like, I don't watch TV.
Me too. I don't watch TV, no sports, no nothing.
I don't get off on watching professional football, basketball play. I didn't even know when the Super Bowl was on a couple weeks ago. I didn't even know who was playing. I had to ask my wife the same day. I was like, I heard the Super Bowl today. Who's playing? Because I don't give a shit.
I don't either. It's not going to pay my bills. None of those guys are going to pay my bills.
I want to be in the game, right? I want to play. I don't want to be a spectator. I never understood those guys that put on other men's jerseys and go watch other men and cheer them on. And yet can't pay their bills.
Right.
They're broke at home. They know all the statistics of every football player, but don't know their own statistics. They don't know how much money they're making, or they're negative cash flow in this, or they can't make rent, or they can't pay their bills. Man, your priorities are out of whack.
That's it.
So let's talk about, we talked about startup. We kind of talked about a few things of how you young guys can get started on a startup, right? But before we get going on that, let's talk where the opportunity is at right now for startups for these younger guys. I think we both talked about it, so we both agree that the opportunity right now is in the blue collar trades.
If you're going to do startups, for sure.
Yeah. There's unlimited amount of work as long as you're willing to work.
That's it. As long as they're willing to work.
As long as you're willing to work. And the labor rate has damn near 4 to 5x. Yep. Because when I told you this, when I started my first mechanic shop in 2004 or 5, the labor rate was 35 to 45 bucks an hour. Right. It is 135 to 150 bucks an hour now in a 20-year period. So that is damn near 4x.
Right.
They're getting a lot more because, for one, the supply and demand of the labor has flip-flopped.
That's it.
So they're getting whatever they want because nobody shows up, and two, nobody wants to work because we've had so much inflation. You can't pay people $8-10 an hour in labor no more.
No,
it doesn't exist.
No.
And the demand. Well, let me back up. And the statistical data that I saw is that the average tradesman is 55 years old. You have to Google that, but I just looked it up 2 weeks ago. I made a post about it. I think it was 55 or 53, 57, somewhere in that range. And they're all dying off, and the people filling the gaps, they're not there.
Well, they don't want to work like those old folks did,
yeah.
Right? You know, the older generation, those guys go to work just like we do, you know, and the young kids just don't want to work like that. And that's where the opportunity is, right? These older folks they're not only dying off, they're retiring, you know, which is leaving a big gap in that market. And, you know, it's got to be filled.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be. So, I mean, that's where the opportunity is, you know. Like you were talking about for startups, for some of these younger guys to come in and get something started, where I like buying companies, you know, I'm buying up some of those companies just to roll up to make sure that, you know, I can support my rentals and the companies that I have can continue on, because a lot of times, you know, we'll keep that owner operator in place, just buy him out.
Yeah.
But, you know, just like you, I don't want to go out there and change plumbing. I don't want to go change heating and air units. But I do want to control that section of that business that we have, right?
But if you can do a startup where you have an unfair advantage, where I started a junk removal. I own a mechanic shop. I'm buying and starting an HVAC company.
Right.
It's not that dangerous and risky because I already got all kind of business.
Right.
It's already. I'm feeding myself my own business because I already have move outs. I got to go clean out.
Correct.
I already know a lot of people in the space in real estate. I already do a lot of change outs for HVAC because I own a bunch of real estate and I'm always flipping. So you got to start thinking like this: is how can I have an unfair advantage as a startup? And that's kind of how mine thinks. But let
me stop you there too. I think you how I always did it was I would go back every 6 months and evaluate what I spent the most money on the past 18 months. I know I'm already servicing those people. I'm using their services. So I'm going to go look at the top 2 or 3 of what I was spending that money on the last 18 months, the most money. That's what I'm going to start buying. I'm going to start picking them off because I know that I use that service more than anything else. And I know even if, like a lot of the service-based business I bought, I'll do my stuff first and then overflow goes to outside customers. Yeah. You know you can still support that business if you do it that way.
Yeah. Let's talk about that now. Let's transition to buying businesses and not doing startups, what we just talked about. You know, the biggest concern I think a lot of young people have, or even older people, well, Michael, you know, isn't that dangerous to buy a startup? Who's going to run it if you're buying a business? Are you running it all the time? What does that look like? I already know the answer, but I'm going to let you do that.
So, you know, I'm looking for, if I'm going to buy a business, I'm looking for 10 employees or more. I'm not looking for the startup style stuff. I want it to be in business 10 years or more. I want it to be established in the community. You know, I'm looking for something that's minimum $1 million a year that they're doing with a 25 to 30% profit margin. I want something that's already cash flowing. But, you know, I do that and I have those parameters because anything less than $1 million, it's going to be tough to really make any money, especially if you got to go get debt to go buy it. You know, anything with less than 10 employees, if, you know, maybe a guy's out there running it and his wife is working in the office, by the time they, you know, retire, go do what they want to, now you're short on employees. I want 10 or more employees, so even if they do decide that they're ready to go sell off and go to Florida and live on the beach for the rest of their life, the business doesn't stop. I'm looking for businesses that can run with or without the owner. So
businesses that can run with or without the owner.
Right. I'm looking for, you know, stuff that the owner doesn't have to be present. If you've got less than 10 employees and you're the owner, you got to be there every day. If not, you're going to come back and, the inmates are going to be running the asylum, right? So, but more than 10 employees, not counting family members, everything's running fine. You've got a number one and a number two guy who are kind of overseeing the smaller crews.
You got to have a
making
quarterback.
Sure everything. You got a quarterback. That's it. And that's either I'm going to hire that quarterback as I buy the company, or I'm going to promote the number two guy to number one as my quarterback for every company that I buy.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there changing out sinks or changing out heating and air units.
And you got to tie them to the hip with you. You got to really incentivize them to handle the day-to-day operation of the problems. There's going to be a lot of problems. So you got to incentivize them to where they have some skin in the game, I would assume.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So I wanted you guys to see the similarities and differences between startups and mergers and acquisitions. The pro of a startup, low cost to start up.
Correct.
The problem with that is no customers.
No cash flow.
No cash flow to start.
Right.
The pro of that is a whole lot less riskier.
That's it.
If it doesn't work out, what are you out? $1,000 to $5,000, maybe 10.
10 grand or less.
But the key to that is the reason I was so good at it is because I had an uncanny ability to outwork everybody, and I was really good at sales. That's another thing we didn't talk about, being really good at sales. And if you're really good at marketing too, that's what really takes you to the next level. Now, the flip side of that is mergers and acquisitions is the pro is you're buying pre-existing cash flow. Yep. You're buying a business that's already established. The con of that is if it don't work out, you're on the hook for $1 million to $2 million note on SBA that could sink you.
Well, it's all in due diligence as well, right? I mean, you gotta go understand what you're buying. You can't just go out there willy-nilly trying to get a loan for $2 million on something you know nothing about either, right? So, the due diligence, you got a lot more due diligence in buying a business than you do
real estate.
Real estate or a startup. Startup, as long as you're hungry and you're driven and you're determined, you can make whatever work, right? 10 grand or less, you can go out there, and if you're hungry and you want to get after it and you get in one of these, like a trades business like we were talking about, the need is there. It's whether you want to go get it or not. It's not will the business work? Yeah, it'll work. There's 20 of them in your town.
Yep.
It'll work, and that's proof of it. Yep. Proof of concept there.
Yep.
But that startup depends on the person that's starting it up if they're going to outwork everybody else. Where you go acquire something, it doesn't really depend on that. You're going to acquire stuff that is already cash flowing that you're wanting to grow, or either you're looking for some sort of semi-passive, cash flow type stuff. I mean, it doesn't require the level of grit that a startup does. Does that make sense? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. And that's what the listeners need to understand.
And it's a more veteran style mindset. Like, you already understand business.
Correct.
You probably already own a bunch of business, and you already got money. Yep. You don't have the time. You have more money than you have time. Whereas vice versa, startup, you have more time than you do money.
Right.
So that's the kind of back and forth play in your mind. You have to figure out how's your skill level. Do you even have money, and do you have any business acromens, right? And that's how you figure out. And how old are you? And how much time do you have? That's how you figure if you do a startup or do a buyout. And I think, I think there's a lot of value to both if you know what you're doing. And with that, I wanted to, unless you have something else you want to talk about on that.
No, I was just going to say, a lot of the students that I deal with the mergers and acquisitions, they already, like you were talking about, they already have some money. But what they're really looking for is a lot of them are current business owners who are buying another business to be able to scale their income level or scale their business, grow their business. They're doing it through mergers and acquisitions. Yeah. They're buying other companies to get bigger, or they're, maybe they own a heating and air company, and they're looking for a plumbing company to make their whole company larger. Instead of going out trying to start a plumbing division, they just go buy someone else to kind of roll up in there. Now they got heating and air and plumbing.
Yep. No, I love it. I love it. And somebody like Michael, it makes more sense to do a mergers and acquisition. Someone like me, it makes more sense for me to do a mergers and acquisition now. Like the little HVAC company we're buying into. I mean, he's a small company. He only did $250,000 by himself, but he doesn't understand business. So it's kind of a half-ass mergers and acquisition and still a startup. But you have to understand both. You have to know where you're at in the business cycle of where to do it, or more or less in the entrepreneurial cycle of where you're at up here and how old you are. And with that said, Mike, I think we got a special announcement we want to talk about, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So Michael and I are teaming up to show young and older entrepreneurs how to do mergers and acquisitions, how to do startups through all of our combined experience. We have 42 years of combined experience.
Means we're old, Chris.
Yeah. You started when you were 21. I started when I was 22. I'm 43. You're 42. So yeah, we're right at 42, 43 years of experience here. So we're announcing that we're going to be partnering up here soon. We're going to be creating, some courses, masterminds to help either the older seasoned vet on mergers and acquisition or the younger.
Right.
The younger guy that's 20 to 30 years old that maybe, he's like me and you. Not everybody's meant for college, right?
Right. I wasn't,
right. So
I dropped out like we talked about,
Yeah, I just cheated my way through. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. I'm hard-headed just like you. I mean, right. I think entrepreneurs are just cut from a different cloth. We're typically not good at school in most cases, and we're just hard-headed, right?
We are. Yep.
So
I know I am.
I am too. But I'm pumped. Michael, talk about what we're going to be doing a little bit together, the name and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do acquisition and startup CEOs. Like you just said, we want to give back to that entrepreneurial community, and it's not a bunch, me, and I know like you, it's guys. It's not going to be flashy. Here's a Lamborghini. Here's we're going to go out on the yacht for the day to do a mastermind. No, we want to do actionable stuff to where if you come to our events and you choose to work with us, you're going to get some results out of it, not just a big hoorah-rah drunk fest where, it's a bunch of ladies dancing on a big boat. I mean, that pays nobody's bills. We're looking to help other guys grow. We're also looking to do deals with some of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
guys and girls that come in,
And to show them, and not just show them our wins, but our losses.
The losses are the most important, man,
100%.
because like we just talked about, it's not a loss, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
What can you learn from it? Did we lose a little money? Yeah. We're going to make some more back next week. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And just mastering the basics. I think if you master the basics and the fundamentals, especially, dude, if you're 20 years old.
The fundamentals and basics are huge.
If you could just master marketing, then sales, and you have an insane work ethic, you can hire out the operations. Case in point, I owned 4 mechanic shops in Lafayette. I had the largest chain of quick lube mechanic shops in this town in Lafayette.
When's the last time you went and did an oil change?
To this day, Michael, I can't do brakes.
I mean,
but I had 4 mechanic shops. I don't even know how to do a brake job. I can't change tires, but I had
Case in point. You don't have to. As long as you can hire the right people.
Well, marketing, sales, hire out operations, become a badass leader. That is the formula. And then you get with a guy like you who's super analytical and you master the processes and systems. We're going to show you guys how to do process system, how to market right, how to set up websites to drive traffic to your business, right? A lot of young guys don't know how to do this. They don't teach you that in college, how to run Facebook ads.
Well, at the end of the day, running the Facebook ads is pretty easy. They got to contract out the website and the SEO because if they're trying to learn that and concentrate on that, they don't have time to concentrate on that business, and the business is going to produce a far larger return. Go get somebody to build it for $1,500. I mean, they've got to understand time value money. If I'm over here and it takes me 40 hours to build a website, and I can get it done for $1,500, can I make more money in those 40 hours than that $1,500? If the answer is yes, hire it out. If the answer is no, how long is it going to take you to learn how to build it for those 40 hours too? Yeah. That's what a lot of, especially the startup guys, don't understand. They try to do everything.
Yep.
And a lot of it's because they're short on cash. But if they hire some of that stuff out that needs to be done that they can hire out, dude, it's a game changer.
Well, and a lot of those young startup guys, and I know me, I had 4 locations, and I wasn't a good marketer. I was a hell of a sales guy and a B2B sales guy. I would go hand out cards, but I didn't understand marketing.
Right.
So, and I built 4 locations pretty quickly. And if I were to understand marketing, direct to seller marketing, which real estate investing has taught me, especially doing wholesaling and doing a lot of direct to seller, that has made me a phenomenal marketer.
Right.
We're going to transmigrate all those skills into these people that want to come into our program and help them scale their service-based business, or they're buying, their mergers and acquisition.
Help them to expand what they currently have. A lot of my students are, like I said, I mean, they currently have existing businesses, and they're looking to buy something else to be able to scale up, to be able to add to that cash flow they have coming in, to be able to add to that business. They don't want to go do startups, and that's, you know, it's great. You know, maybe it's something where, you know, we teach the younger generation how to build these startups,
Yep.
and then if they decide to exit those startups, got somebody lined up to buy them there for them.
Yep.
It just depends on what they're looking to do, right?
Right. And on top of that, you know, they make a bunch of money with their business.
A ton of money in the middle.
What do they got to do after they get their money? They got to roll it into real estate, right?
That's it.
You know,
that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what you did.
know?
That's what I've done. We both come from a service-based background.
Right.
I came from,
Right.
like, I'm a blue collar as they get. I mean, I put on my boots and went to work every day for 20 years, wore the same outfit, my Levi's and my Dickie shirt with boots on, and I went to work like a blue collar as they get, right? So, you know, you guys got to understand, we're not speaking from bullshit, you know.
That's
This is
something
experience.
we read in a book or seen somebody else do that we tried to patch together and go try to teach you.
I got blood, sweat, tears. I got receipts.
Yeah.
I still got some of the businesses that are still open that I started 20 years ago, right?
So do I.
So anyway, this was great, Michael. I appreciate you coming on. I'm super pumped to partner with you and, you know, and see how we can help people. And because I know we can help a lot of young kids. There's a huge demand for young aspiring entrepreneurs to make a lot more money doing this than going to college.
Right, for sure.
So
they just got to want to work for it.
they're going to have to work, right? I think the big banks in college have sold most of these kids a pipe dream, a bill of goods to say, oh, you go to college, you're just set for life. I know kids that are coming out of HVAC school, mechanic school.
Making twice as much.
As the guy that's got a 4-year bachelor's degree.
Yep.
Times are changing. You got to change with the times.
That's it.
Anyway, Michael, where can they follow you at?
On Facebook under Acquisition CEO, or Michael Byers and Acquisition CEO under Instagram.
Yep. Michael's going to be speaking at the next Allies Mastermind, March 6th and 7th here at my house, where we're going to be probably talking a lot about what we talked about here, but getting more into the nitty gritty.
More granular.
Yep. And we'll probably be launching this program here, I would think, in the next 30 to 60 days.
Correct.
So if you guys are interested in that, just inbox me or Michael. You told them where they can follow you on Facebook and Instagram. Yep. Inbox me or Michael, entrepreneur.
Yep.
Right?
And we'll get you set up.
Yeah, we'll put you in that list to, you know, if you're interested. Other than that, if you follow me and you're not interested in that and you want to just do real estate, inbox me skills on Instagram at Real Estate Rood or Chris Rood. And if you want to come out to one of the Allies Mastermind and just learn about different business acronyms about real estate, business marketing, branding, the whole raising private money, that's what we do these events every quarter. Michael, this is your third event you spoke at?
Third one. Yep.
Third event. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Remember, you guys got to always keep skilling up. I appreciate you being on this podcast.
Thanks,
Michael, I appreciate you. I'll see you next time on the next Beyond the Skills podcast. Peace.